Hello and welcome to the Thursday episode of the 905er podcast and the weekly roundup. My name is Roland Tanner.
I am Joel McLeod.
And this week we're talking about the chicken kind of backboneless coward of a premier who went to war with the teachers last week. He said he didn't go to the war with teachers. He went to war with education workers, the CUPE. And did so using the extreme nuclear option of the Notwithstanding Clause. And today he announced that, he's such a nice guy, he decided that he wasn't going to use any of those things and he was going to roll it all back just as long as CUPE were nice. So another masterstroke from Doug Ford. Joel, what do you think?
It stuns me at how inept this Tory government ultimately is. I suspect somewhere in their haste to do a deal, they don't want to. They hate unions to their core. I know that there's a number of unions, private sector unions, that endorse them. We mentioned Leona before, and a couple others. Well, because they were going to promise they were going to give them all these nice jobs and training centers and all that stuff. And that's all good and wonderful, but at the core, conservatives hate unions. There's not I've never met a conservative government at anywhere in the world that was pro union. I don't see why this one would be any different, and this one isn't. That's the thing. They thought they could go in, and they thought they had the upper hand because of COVID. They thought they could, parents were tired of the virtual learning, they're tired of the homeschooling and all that stuff. So they said, okay, we can put the pressure now and get a really good deal on the wages. And CUPE said, no, not having it. Now, ironically, I think Ford probably could have won this argument if he just stuck with his guns and waited out a strike by CUPE, and eventually public sentiment probably would have turned towards him to solve the issue. But someone around him, and again, Doug Ford isn't smart enough to realize the consequences of his actions or understand the dangerousness of using the Notwithstanding Clause. My bet is some 20-something staffer said, hey, there's this thing called the Notwithstanding Clause. We could just do what we want. We invoke the clause, and they have to do it. They have to deal with it. And they said, yeah, great, do it. Mr. Lecce, write up the bill. Let's do it. And that's the thing is, you ask anyone in this province, they might have been on the fence about the negotiations. They might not be happy with CUPE getting 11%. Fair enough. That's a legitimate concern, I would say, that people could have. But where everybody said, no, this is too far. You do not invoke the Notwithstanding Clause to get away with it. Because man, oh man, did he woke a sleeping giant. The labor movement has been mobilized like I have never seen it ever in this province, at least not in my lifetime. I've never seen the labor movement mobilize. Every union is up in arms now, and they know, okay, they can, like, there was talk of an actual general strike going to happen in a week's time if things didn't change. There was talk of, okay, Unifor was talking about going on a general strike in solidarity with CUPE. There were a number of unions from Quebec coming down the 401. They were going to come in and march in solidarity with CUPE. Like there were protests out in Alberta, protesting Doug Ford's use of the Notwithstanding Clause for this. Like he kicked over a huge hornet's nest. And he was, I honestly think he honestly thought he was going to get away with it. He thought that, oh, everybody must think like me on this. And he didn't realize that, no. Again, Doug, you only have 17% of the population of Ontario backing you in this fight. The rest of us are, at best, would be lukewarm to the negotiation deal. But we all know the value of our rights. And they say you got to negotiate with CUPE. Yeah, that's the thing is, going forward, like Doug Ford blinked. He blinked hard. He showed his hand and he lost. He was hoping to get a precedent going forward for every future labor negotiation that he has to deal with. Not like he still has to deal with all the teachers unions going forward. You screwed up big, Dougie, because they all looked at it and said, "Yep, what are you going to come? You're going to have to come back with us with a fair deal or better, unless you want us to clog up the machine again." Like Doug has really screwed up on this one.
Yeah, I wonder if he's woken the sleeping giant. I mean, the union movement, not just in Canada but around the world, certainly in the English-speaking world, has been, well, a sleeping giant, let's say, for a couple of decades. It rarely really flexes its muscles, and when it has done, we've seen back to work legislation from multiple governments, which again I don't think is right. I don't think it should have been used by any government. And then now to sort of go even further than that, I mean, but as far as the PCs were concerned, this they had precedent that they could get away with this kind of stuff. I was like, I mean, Doug Ford, likes to talk a tough game. He's always talking a tough game. He is not tough in the least when push comes to shove. He backs down faster than anything. We saw it with the issue of amalgamation. We saw it when he got booed at that event in Toronto back in
I remember that.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, he does not like being unpopular. He has no backbone. He has no, the person who got me into politics in my youth was Margaret Thatcher in Britain. And she got me into it because I despised everything she stood for. So I'm not going to sit here and praise her now, but I will say that she was there for the long run. She destroyed the miners' unions in Britain. She destroyed all the unions, really. She made them too scared to strike because they were scared they might lose. And Doug's done exactly the opposite, where he's like, oh yeah, if we all make enough of a noise, we're going to scare this little bunny rabbit back into his burrow. So yeah, I mean, and much more importantly, and we're going to come on to this later in the episode, there's a whole lot of other things happening in the province that are really, really important in the last few days. I mean, this is the core of this parliament, if you like, of this government, is everything that's happened between Friday and as we're recording this on Monday. It's all about development. It's all about municipalities. It's all about the province unreasonably overruling democratically, properly done, properly considered municipal decisions, treating decent, hardworking, not particularly well-paid working people like CUPE employees working in education, working on 39 to 40,000 a year, screwing those people over and pretending that somehow that they're being unreasonable and that they're somehow scrounging, having come through COVID on the front line with the children. It's hopefully that one of the unions have also shown us is what we need to do as a population now to face down this government, and not to wait for a better government to come along in maybe 4 years, maybe 8 years. We can't wait. We can't trust the Ontario Liberals or the NDP or the Greens to have the backbone themselves, because the organizations I can point to that have not made Doug Ford back down on anything are those other parties. They have been dreadful so far, and unless something miraculous starts to happen, I don't see any change coming that way soon. So it needs to come from we the people, really,
something we said in previous episodes. Hint, hint, people, go check out the back catalog. You'll find some nifty tidbits of enlightenment there. But something we said is like always the assumption was, we'll have to put up with this for 4 years, then we'll vote in a new government, and they'll replace it somewhat. And I would argue that no, that model has gone the way of the dinosaur. It's people will take actions to their own hand, and they'll do it, in a peaceful, democratic way. Like technically what CUPE did, I guess technically was illegal. Like by striking against the notwithstanding clause, it was illegal. However, it was a justified uh, uh, breaking of the law. Like they were, it was, they were marching, they were striking for their civil rights, their rights to collective bargain, to express themselves and to organize. And that's the thing. That's the power of democracy, is that you're right. Like we have to go, this government clearly shows it does not care about the rules. It does not care about the law. It does not care about, our feelings. It doesn't care about us. We aren't what this government cares about. This government cares about money. This government cares about business. This government cares about big business, not even the small ones. It cares about the big business interests that run this province. They are on their side, clearly. We're on our own on this, people. We always have been from the get-go. The lucky thing is our numbers are far greater than theirs. And we've seen improvement. Like hats off to every CUPE member who marched. You know, you showed what you can do when you just say, I'm mad as heck and I'm not going to take it anymore. You brought this government to its knees and brought them back to the table kicking and screaming. Good for you. My hat's off to you. The rest of us are going to have to probably take some lessons and learn what you guys did and apply it to, we'll talk about it later in the episode, but there are many, many more fights out there that we're just going to say enough's enough. We cannot wait for another government to come into power to fix it. And Lord knows, just say, no, Doug, we're not going to let you break it anymore. It's not yours to break. It's ours. You're the caretaker. Get it together.
Well, let's take a quick break pretty soon in this episode and then come back because we need to talk next about the Greenbelt and the boundary expansion votes that Hamilton and Halton took. And this is the next step in this conversation. I mean, it's really one big topic today, but it's covering an awful lot of ground. And after the break, we're going to talk about that. And welcome back. So
we're talking about the Greenbelt. Let's buckle up, baby.
Yeah.
That's my bad Greenbelt pun.
So, yeah. Late on Friday,
yes,
all sorts of major announcements came out of this government. Late on Friday. If any of you watched The West Wing, you remember one of the early episodes, I think in the first series, on the first year of it. It was called Take Out the Trash Day, and it was about how governments announce things they don't really want people to know about late on a Friday afternoon, because all the news folk are going away for the weekend. People are thinking about other things. They just want to get home and watch the television, whatever. So out came the announcement that the promise that Doug made not to touch the Greenbelt. Guess what? That promise wasn't worth jack. They're touching all over the Greenbelt. And we're just going to move the Greenbelt to more appropriate places.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a thing that can happen.
The entire point of the Greenbelt is where it is important to preserve the biodiversity and the sense of ecological nature of where it is. That's why the Greenbelt is where it is. It's not just a random feature.
And part and parcel of that same process was the announcement, as predicted by us, as predicted by others, but certainly, no surprise whatsoever. It didn't stop it feeling like an absolute kick in the stomach when you read it, that the democratic, properly done decisions of Hamilton Council and also of Halton Regional Council, representing the best part of 1 million voters or more. I don't know, I can't work out the sums. Were just being thrown in the garbage as well, and that the promise is like, no, we don't give a shit. All your planning doesn't count for anything. Well, you're going to build on your white belt, come hell or high water. And actually,
I think it's sort of just to recap to listeners who might not be familiar, but this is a great story. Is that so? Hamilton was debating. It was an honest to God debate, a fair debate on whether or not to expand their urban boundary. There were counselors on both sides of the argument, and it was a lively debate. Now, here's where it gets interesting: is a grassroots organization of everyday citizens, small businesses all get together and they start putting their energy, their resources, and their energies into making their opinions known. And they say, this matters to us. This, our vote will matter on this, what you decide to do on this topic. And here's the great thing. City council listened. They listened and they said, okay, well, let's hear your arguments. They listened to it and they took it to heart. And you know what? City council listened to the people. This is everything about this decision by Hamilton City Council. I know the previous council, we took them to task on a number of things. This was one thing that they did right. They listened to the people, and the people made an articulated, educated argument on why they did not want that boundary moved. City council listened to it, and they voted to keep the boundary where it was. They did not expand it. It was a democratic process through and through, start to finish. It was what you want to see, a vigorous debate, both sides putting forward arguments, and in the end, City council listened to the people, the will of the people, and they said, let's not move. The objective was, we're going to infill all those old buildings that need to be renovated, that need to be redone in downtown Hamilton, redo those first, get people living there first, revitalize the downtown first. Then we can look at expanding into the white belt.
And just let's be clear about something, that decision was completely in line, completely consistent with everything that the province has been asking municipalities to do for the last almost 20 years. We're getting very close to 20 years now since the Places to Grow Act. So basically, for that whole time, all parties, all governments, whether Liberal or PC, have said we need intensification. We need to focus on our downtowns. We need to not just keep on sprawling. We need intensification. Everybody said that. I can point to miles and miles of text that came out of this government after 2018 saying exactly that same thing. I can point to a million miles of documents written by developers, very well-known developers in this province, saying exactly the same thing. It's like, well, we need to build downtown because you don't want us building out on the Greenbelt and the White Belt, do you? So, let's make sure you just give us an easy ride in the downtowns. All fair arguments. And now all of a sudden it's like, nah, you know what? Yeah, we do want them to build downtown, and we want them to be able to build anything they want downtown, by the way, and basically have no limits on it. And also we're going to build and sprawl and keep on the terrible, dreadful, disastrous, counterproductive development we've done in this province for the last 50 years, so that we can keep on ruining it, so we can keep on making it one big sprawling nightmare of a 905 region. We have to fucking stop them. I know this isn't a very journalistic turn of phrase, but every municipality declared a climate emergency 4 years ago. And I don't hold much of a light for those. I thought it was, they were, it's window dressing, but and I've done a small amount of work with councils in the UK where they actually mean it when they talk about climate emergency, and you see the huge kind of weight that goes behind that decision when councils actually mean it when they talk about climate emergency and making changes, and the 905 council certainly did not mean it. Nevertheless, they made those declarations. The public have made it clear that they do not want boundary expansion, either in Hamilton or Halton, or I'd imagine most other areas of the 905. And that's democracy in action. This nonsense about the province just treating municipalities with absolute contempt, of ignoring the votes, the democratic decisions of this level of government, it's got to stop. They've got to learn the damn lesson. They've got to learn the same damn lesson they just learned from the unions, is that this is the way it's done for a reason. And if municipalities are completely out of line with what the province is trying to do, sure, the province has ultimately some kind of a veto over municipalities. But it's some kind of a veto ultimately, in the same way that the federal government ultimately has some kind of a veto over the provinces. It's very rarely used.
We need to take into account, though, that this violation, this breaking of his promise not to touch the Greenbelt is telling, because nobody in the public was taught. This was not a debate that was happening anywhere. This was something that quite frankly I think developers are pushing because it's open land to develop on. Again, one thing that we've talked about again many times in this podcast is it's easier to just pave over a farmland, put up a new subdivision of McMansion homes that are inherently unaffordable. It's not affordable housing that we're building. It's just housing. And that's something like you want to sound like the argument that the government is putting forward is, well, we need to build here because that's going to bring housing prices down. No, it's not, because the housing that they're going to build there is not affordable housing. It's not cheap housing to build there. It's going to be those big sprawling McMansions that none of us can afford, that are just going to drive up housing prices. Because here's the thing, those developers, the reason why they want to build there is because it's cheaper for them to build there. Right now, housing costs are skyrocketing because of inflation. It's the profit margin is shorter and shorter. So what do you have to do? Well, I got to build a bigger and bigger home that I can sell for $1.5 million, $2 million to make a profit margin on, and then dump the cost of the neighborhood off to the municipality. The profit margin on renovating a downtown loft apartment style complex isn't as great. They don't want to make as much money off of that, and that's what it comes down to. They're going to sell off this land. We're going to see big sprawling McMansions happening, and we're not going to see housing prices come down for the average Joe. It's just the economics aren't there. Not to mention the concern that I'm reading from environmentalists is that some of the land that is being towed, not the stuff necessarily around Hamilton, but other parts of the Greenbelt are in the wetlands. When they wanted to roll back the Conservation Authority powers to curb development on wetlands and watersheds, the stuff that's what the conservation authorities are all about. They're talking about, let's just roll that back so people can build on these places. It's a bad spot. Literally, it's a bad spot. You're building homes on land that is not suitable to build homes on. And here's the thing: those developers, they'll just build the neighborhoods, sell the homes off. They wipe their hands. They walk off to the next. They're not liable for the 10, 20 years down the road, the water damage that might happen, the flooding that might occur due to poor water management.
Well, yeah, and again, this has already happened in other places in the world, and I can speak to this one with almost direct experience. That after the Second World War, Britain is not a big, we can fit Britain into Ontario a couple of times over, 3 or 4 times, I can't remember how many times. Not a lot of space. So after the war, the development industry were like, hey, we've got all these floodplains, which they're nice and flat. They're great for building on. Let's build loads of houses on floodplains. And so they did. And the funny thing about floodplains is they flood.
Mm-hmm.
And in the 80s and 90s, there were suddenly large estates of houses that were so flooded so frequently that they became uninsurable and unsellable. Where people were losing their shirts on houses that they couldn't sell. I had a friend who had a house that was flooded so often it was just it was a basement condo basically. And it's like you're put in. Basically, you're on the hook for somebody else's terrible decision. The other people who are on the hook for it, well, the taxpayer, because the municipalities have to step in when no one else steps in. The fact that Ford has been slashing left and right the development fees, who pays for it? We do. This is when Ford smashes development fees. He's not making it easier for developers. Well, he is making it easier for developers. But what he's doing is he's downloading their payments, what they should be paying, to us, the taxpayer. That money still has to be spent. It's coming out of yours and my pockets. It's voodoo economics at best. It's fraud at worst. I don't know. We're at the point now with the environmental stuff in this province that, and again, around the world, it has been shown that, well, we certainly see with Doug Ford that a relatively small amount of well-organized resistance scares the guy to pieces. In other places in Europe, there were movements, 10, 20 years ago, where when bypasses or ring roads or whatever were proposed, people just went out and camped in the damn woods until the developers went away, and it became too expensive to build those roads because of the sheer difficulty of shifting people off the land. And that kind of civil disobedience, I think, is completely legitimate in this circumstance. And when it comes to the Greenbelt, this Ontario is a big province, but it's a very small province in terms of land that's actually usable for agriculture, in terms of the very delicate kind of ecosystems outside the Canadian Shield.
I would say this. There is a silver lining for the political activists who might be listening. The other thing, according to StatsCan, building permits, new development permits are down across the province. This isn't, despite all this talk of, we're going to open this up to development and whatnot. Right now, developers not chomping at the bit to move in and plow it over just yet. They're waiting for pricing to come down so that they can start again ratcheting up those. They can increase the profit margin on building those homes. Again, that's part of that's problem why you can't. If you want to bring down housing prices, don't leave it to the private sector. They're not going to do it. They want a biggest enough profit margin as possible. It's not going to happen. So I mean, there's the time is might be on our side if we organize and if we mobilize with the intention of you make this an issue that you demand that the NDP or the Liberals turn back the clock on this policy starting on day one. That this is they reinstate the boundaries of the Greenbelt. They reinstate development charges, all this stuff. They put it back to the way it was. They fix the shop, so to speak. And you just clog up the mess until the next election. That's the strategy going forward. We've seen CUPE turn back Doug's mind on this within a weekend. I think it can be done. You're just gonna have to put a lot more power to them, because here's the thing: the CEOs of Mattamy and National and Green Park and all the major developers in this province, they're calling him saying, you got to push this through. Like we just need the policy there. We'll build eventually.
And what we really, really need now to happen across the 905 and across Ontario is for, to a certain amount, groups that have traditionally not got along particularly well to start working together. There are community groups in places like Burlington where the kind of environmentalists didn't get on too well with the citizens who were concerned about development downtown, because the environmentalists were like, well, we don't want sprawl, so we want downtown building. And the people who didn't want downtown building were like, well, hey, but we have to live with this. Those are conflicting. Certainly there's a certain amount of conflicting objectives there, but ultimately the objective for all of you is the same, and that is that local democracy matters, and that local democracy should be respected, and that a better local democracy will build better cities, and that having the province just come in and turn over everything at a whim is not the way we want to go. Whether you like the current mayor of City X or City Y is not the point here. It's democracy. We can't suddenly say, well, you know what, I'll side with Doug Ford on this because I don't like Mayor so-and-so, when Mayor so-and-so has the votes. So I don't know. I mean, let's throw it over to our listeners. Like, do you want us to pursue this as hard as I think we should? I mean, it's like I say, it's not very journalistic of us, but we're a progressive podcast. We're not neutral on things like this. I don't think anybody expects or wants us to be neutral on stuff like this. We're basically on the side of municipalities having the power to do what they're supposed to do, because that's what people vote for. Do you want us to pursue this, and do you want your political leaders to, Andrea Horvath? I'm not having a go at her. Honestly, I hope she does really well as a mayor. I wish her all the very best. I'm very hopeful that she'll be good. But she came out with a statement on Twitter this overturning of the Hamilton boundary, and I can't quote it exactly right now, but it was like, it's a concerning development, and we'll be considering what we should do. It's like, no. It's not concerning. It's an outrage. We want to hear your fury at this. We want to see your commitment to doing something about it. I mean, John Paul Danko going to hit the tone much better when he says we're going to resist this with everything that we can. It's like, yeah, you're damn right, you should. And I want to see them. I want to see Hamilton talking to Halton, going and knocking on Gary Carr's door, and talking to all the councillors in Burlington and Oakville and all the other places, and say, how are we going to stop this together? Not alone, not separately.
During the municipal election, this is something that we constantly talked about, was the need for the mayors to start talking and organizing together. And that, because this government showed that they don't care about you. We said on election day that, we were looking at Andrea Horvath and Bonnie Crombie to stand up and say, no, stop. Like you can't just roll over us, Doug. And the sad thing is, will the mayors and the municipalities have the backbone of a union? I doubt it. They're politicians. They will go whichever way that the wind blows, unfortunately. But that's what's needed. Is you need that kind of that union mentality of, no, we have either municipalities have the ability to start dictating the course of their own development. Give us targets to reach. Give us targets to reach, but we'll lay out the path to get there. And if that's, if Andrea Horvath really wants to make a name for herself, that's how you're right. We need to start reaching out to the Gary Carrs, the Marianne Mead Wards, the Bonnie Crombies, and even the Patrick Browns. Like, but you got to get Patrick Brown and Stephen Del Duca up in Vaughan as well. I mean, put the pressure on to these municipal mayors. Say, you've got to get on board with this. We can't be doing this. We got to stop the sprawl, whether fighting climate change or not. What's going on? And I suspect that this. Will we see it? I doubt it, because I don't think the municipal politicians in this province, I don't think, have the stones to stand up to this premier.
And if they won't, fine. We have to do it like we have to do every other damn thing without them. The environmentalists, they need to get together with the people who are concerned about development. They need to get together with everybody who has a stake in municipal decisions being made and respected. The artists and the musicians and the everybody who's involved in whatever way. I mean, again, the unions should be involved in this. They're big players in a municipal level, and clearly they've got clout. Leuna made a good statement last week. Let's hope that Leuna comes in from the cold. I mean, I don't have much of a hope, because they are basically a development company with a union stuck on the side. But anyway, let's hope that they actually show a bit of spine. And I suspect with the education, with the whole education piece, that this is not over by a long chalk. This is just one battle, and it's a good sign that Ford has continued his habit of choking at the first opportunity. Nevertheless, we can't assume that's he's not. This isn't the end of it. The CUPE still don't have their deal.
This isn't the end of it. Like this, we're going into. We might as well start getting into the second or the third story about Doug Ford, and that's the fact that he chickened out this week, or he got lucky that the court said no, he didn't have to appear in front of the Emergencies Act inquiry, despite the fact that the premier of the province where the main emergency was happening, like, maybe we want to hear from you, but Doug chickened out and didn't show up, because that's what he is. He's a coward. He doesn't want to show up for accountability, and he wants to get his way, but he's not going to get it. But this is like Doug Ford's been just destroying everything he touches. He ultimately just destroys. Like, we seem to have forgotten the healthcare system is collapsing. We haven't fixed that. That crisis is still happening. It's still ongoing. We still have people waiting for hours for basic care in our ERs. We have nurses and doctor shortages still happening, and no plan to fix it. This crisis is still continuing. Uh, he's willing to literally plow over all of our green space to fix it. And you know what? There are serious questions about what was his involvement with the possible truck convoy snafu up in Ottawa.
What possibly does he have to hide? You know, why? I mean, we know that the excuse of parliamentary privilege is garbage. As you mentioned, I mean, the prime minister could use the same excuse. He's not doing that. The it's just is absolutely an excuse. It's a technicality. He's got away with it because it is right. The law cannot interfere with the sitting of a legislature. However, the legislature isn't actually sitting on those days. Doug will probably be snowmobiling or whatever it is he usually spends his time doing. It's an excuse. So what has he got to hide? Well, we know that his behavior during that whole crisis was appalling. I mean, just taking the facts that are already on the public record, he was at the best a complete absentee landlord, so to speak, in terms of getting the OPP to play any kind of useful role. So why is he not speaking? Well, because he's got something to hide. We have to assume. I mean, it's a reasonable conclusion to make, I think, unless we're giving evidence to the contrary. This government just has no shame, and they should be held accountable for it. But I mean, it's again, we're in this void of political leadership from the opposition, where they're not showing up for work really, and don't have leaders. I mean, sure, a bunch of NDP has kind of waved and shouted and got themselves thrown out of the legislature, and so that's everything you need to know about the legislature. They're getting thrown out. It's the most useful thing you can ever do. It really is a court of registration. The Ontario legislature doesn't have any effect on legislation. You can pass a law that just completely overturns the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, go through on a Friday afternoon, with no ability from the opposition to do anything about it. It's ridiculous.
What struck me about all that was the fact that the NDP were still going for these juvenile tactics. Like, I'm gonna get thrown. Like, who care? You got thrown out of the only place that mattered. Yeah, I know your vote doesn't matter, but you go on the record, you show up, and it is what it is. The fact is, the simple matter is, there was no leader. There's no political leader for that crisis that appeared. It's a travesty that both the Liberals and the NDP have nobody to lead them through to make hay of this travesty of a premier that we have. And ultimately, yes, broken record time. It's up to all of us. We're it. And you know what? That's great, because then we can, like, it's not a matter of the Liberals or the NDP coming to us, the people, and saying, "Oh, hey, now you have to vote for me." It's just saying, "No, we'll grind the whole thing to a halt." I mean, that's what.
And if you live in Burlington or Hamilton or Halton, I should say, not Burlington. If you live in those ridings today, make sure your MPPs, your Conservative MPPs, know how you feel about this, how you feel about having the decisions of your councils just trampled on in this way. If your MPP is Natalie Pierre, and some of you may have that MPP, you probably wouldn't be able to find her if you passed her on the street. But anyway, what can we do? Or Effie Triantafilopoulos or Sam Oosterhoff, or these people who take pride in wrecking the things that the people who elected them take pride in. They should be put on damn well notice that people are coming from them this time. This isn't tolerable. They have gone way too far. They've stepped over every boundary of what is decent and what is normal in political practice. I'm sick to damn death of it. This isn't the way that government is supposed to work. It's broken. we've been saying it's broken and it's been building for a long time, but now we have a government that isn't even willing to pretend to play by the rules anymore, to respect the different levels of government, that just has no respect for anything. And we should show them the exact same amount of respect that they show us.
You know what? I'm going to say let's leave it at that for this week's roundup. Thanks very much, everyone, for listening. If you're a member of CUPE and you are listening to this episode, hats off to you, you and your comrades, your fellow strikers. Good job. Take care, everyone, and we're going to get through it. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We'd love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.
Looking to make the most out of this life and optimize your personal wellness? Then check out the Natural Man Podcast. Join me, host Mike C., as we explore all areas of human wellness, physical, mental, and emotional. Learn strategies to optimize your own well-being and be in the driver's seat of your own health. Remember, your doctor works for you. Learn biohacks, neurohacks, ways to improve sleep, and ways to optimize your body and your mind. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, the Fountain app, and at naturalmanpodcast.com.